All right, welcome back. Today we are relocating the battery. So naturally, for this car, it sits right in front of the passenger side, so right on the front of the firewall. So we're going to move it back to the passenger rear, right here in this box.
No. Sorry, I thought there was more.
There's nothing to talk about.
Oh, we're great at this.
Jesus.
We
don't know why we're doing it.
Right here in this box. Okay, then I take over.
This here box here is going to hold the battery.
Where did we get the box?
CJ Pony Parts?
Yeah, so this upgrade or modification is not required by any of the racing that we're doing, but there are other racing bodies that require this sort of thing, which has like a box with a vent on it and a battery hold down. We also bought a bunch of other stuff. I'm going to show you now what that is for the install. So first thing we've got is some assorted zip ties and zip tied hold downs. Basically, they mount to the body and then you zip tie the wires through that. So that's just basic cable management stuff. We also have a box, we have a bag full of accessories that came with the original battery relocation box. We have some quick disconnect terminals. We have some copper eyelets for all different size cables. We'll probably not need many of those. We just bought some stuff and it came with heat shrink as well. Some more cable ties that these actually push into a hole to secure some cable management things. We bought a terminal block or distribution block. I'm not sure what you want to call it. The red item here. That will go in the firewall or on the firewall, and we will wire the old battery leads directly to that and then power that distribution block from the new power wires that we're going to be installing in the car. We also bought some new tools. We've got a crimper for large gauge wires. That's the big tool there. We've got a small crimper for some small terminal work. And then we have some wire cutters that when you're cutting big gauge wire, you have to use those or you'll get a nasty cut. Beyond that, the kit came with 16 feet of 4 gauge power wire. I believe so. I think it's 12 to 16 feet, we're not sure. We bought a little extra just because we weren't sure, because we're gonna run power across the dash to a Killswitch and then back across the dash, so we thought we might need a little extra. There's a new ground wire that is mounted somewhere in the trunk. The red item there is a little power distribution block as well. I'm not sure if that's what it's called. But anyways, that will allow us to pass power through the firewall without making a big hole in the firewall. It's basically like an insulated terminal. So you connect on one side, it can connect on the other side through the firewall. We also have a 150 amp circuit breaker that we will mount near the battery in the trunk. If anything does happen, because we're not electricians, we might cause a problem. If anything shorts, that should save the car from burning down, hopefully, knock on wood. That would be a terrible experience. You'll see a couple items there, a sticker and a resistor. That came with the Killswitch that we bought. It's already in the car, that's why we're not showing you, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then we have some leftover, it's basically thermo heat shield for a cable or for a tube. We had that from when we did the gauge install where we have oil pressure gauge. We don't know if we'll need that, but we're just gonna have to hold on to it and use it if we need it in this project.
All right, so that sounds like a lot. It's just, there's a lot of small parts and pieces that go along with this project. While we're at it, I know we've talked about this in the past, but when the car got stolen in November, the guy absolutely destroyed the ignition. So we figured, our motto has always been upgrade when you can. We always hate replacing stuff with just the basics. So we're gonna move away from a keyed ignition and do a push start. And Dan has created a really, really good system up there that includes the kill switch and everything. So we'll talk about that later in the video, but I think that's it. So we've already, the car is already stripped and we've already taken out the dash, which also helps. We kind of aligned this project with the roll bar because we are going to be pulling stuff in and out. So a lot of that beginning work is done. So we're going to go ahead and start the wiring process and kind of show how it goes.
Okay, so we are getting started on the battery relocation kit. I don't know if we even mentioned this, but we had this mess of wiring that ran from, basically it's in the dash at some point. It ran through the entire car. It's real long, it's custom. It's got like some foil lined wire. It even goes to like a legit looking connector, but just some of these things don't look factory. And it was even included in the loom to the back of the car, but we decided we're gonna pull it because it's been unplugged and smashed for years.
Yeah, since we bought the car.
Yeah, so we assumed it wasn't doing anything important, and we pulled it, and the car still starts, so weight savings.
Yeah, I love that.
So that's out. So now what we're doing is just kind of laying out the general components of the battery relocation. We want the box to sit here. We're kind of going over the orientation of the battery, the box, where everything else will sit. So we have this grommet where we can pass our negative cable through along with the battery vent tube so that we can get a very good ground right to the frame rail for the negative terminal and have the vent go to the exterior of the car, which is good. So by using this location, it kind of forced us to now have to put the box openings in the back, because you had to reach that for the vent, and you have to reach, oops, you only have so much of this negative cable, although we could buy more of it. But the negative battery terminal is this way, and then we'll just have the positive battery terminal wire come in through that side. So we like the way that this is laying out. It will look clean on this side. It will just be a little bit more finicky to get stuff mounted properly when you don't have good access to it on that side, but that's a now problem and not a future problem. So we're gonna go ahead and do it this way. We haven't started running the positive cable yet. We have the circuit breaker sort of roughly placed where we think we're gonna put it. Not entirely sure if we'll do it there or not. It's flexible. But this thing also came with this really long awl thread. It's obviously too long, but I just don't like the solution that we're coming up with. You have to drill, take this box off. You have to drill through the car to mount the plate with these awl threads. It holds the plate, holds the box in, holds the box closed, and holds the battery down. And to get the battery out in this location, we're gonna have to basically make it so that when you loosen all of the top nuts, that it falls through and stops at some point, but just gives us a little bit more clearance to get the battery out. That's a lot of talking. We've not gotten a lot accomplished, so we're gonna keep going. Although we're gonna bring you to the front and show you what we're doing up there. Okay, so now we've brought you up to the front. You can already see we've tech screwed this terminal block or distribution block, I don't know what you call it, to the firewall. We saw this done by, what was the name on Instagram?
4 Eyes.
4 Eyes. Oh, he has a YouTube and an Instagram. He did this when he did his battery relocation. We really liked the way it looked, so we are straight up ganking that from him. What I have so far planned to do is bring our power wire from the kill switch back across the dash and through the firewall right here and up to this first post, which will then bring power to everything else. Then we have 3 separate positive cables or power wires that we will land on this. I can remove this quickly. You can see that that will be, you know, incoming power and then distributed to these other 3 lugs for our 3 power wires. The only thing left we have is the ground wires, and I want to, just like I grounded the wires in the back where it went to a solid chunk of metal and a good connection, I want to do that up here as well. It's very important. So we haven't picked our place yet, but we're gonna have to cut the negative wire out of this loom because it's combined with the positive leads at the moment, and then we'll pick a good spot that it can reach without too much reconfiguration and mount it to that at some point, to the chassis at some point, maybe directly to the block. I don't know what we're doing just yet. But yeah, that's where we're at. So now we just need to actually make things happen. So the box came sort of unassembled. It has like grommets for the wires to pass through, a fitting for the vent tube, and it needs to be held together by a couple 1032 screws. The screws and nuts did not come with lock washers, so I'm just adding a lock washer from my personal collection. So good practice on cutting threads is to make sure that you get the nut. So my mark is right there. Make sure you get the nut past where you're cutting. So we're gonna lop that section off, and then we'll unthread that nut, and it'll clean up the threads as we go back off. Need to just clamp this down. Right in the hole. Okay. Well. Beautiful.
Nicely done.
Now we'll measure this length, and we'll do the same thing on the other rod. We got the box mounted. It's secure. We had to cut the length of threaded rod down a little bit, but I'm sure you guys saw that in the video. Still have all the protective film on this thing. I'm just now taking it back apart. That comes off. Let's see if we can get this out. Yikes. Hate that. Not sure we'll be able to do that with a battery in it, but okay, that's battery box installed. Now we can start running the wire. So we're going to modify this bracket, or the holes in this bracket. We're gonna open them up a little bit. When we went to go test fit this, you have to like really get it even as you go down. And then, thanks. Beyond scoring up the threads and causing problems, it's just difficult and it's not necessary. So we're gonna open these up. It should allow it to slide a little bit better. Up and down on there, and just make it easier to get it on and off. Okay, so we went from probably just over 3/8 inch hole to a 7/16 hole, and much easier to install. Okay, just a little update. We've got the bottom of the tray, battery tray, mounted with the rods cut to the right length. I've gone ahead and installed the circuit breaker and started the positive wire to the battery. I can't really finish the ends of the positive wire because they pass through a small strain relief on the box, and then the ends on the batteries are too big to go through that box. So really you have to mount the battery in place, put the box around it, and then connect the terminals, the battery cable ends to the wires once it's sort of in place. So this is kind of as far as I can go in the back of the car. Now I can start running the positive wire up towards the front into the dash. Okay, so I have now run the power cable. I already talked about how we're going from the circuit breaker back to the battery, but now the circuit breaker forward is run. You can see the beginning of it there, and I'll move around to the other side. Comes over the rear axle hump in the back of the car, follows the stock wiring loom, this side of the brace, the roll cage, and then we'll go underneath the carpet here. And then at this bulkhead, I turned to the corner and headed toward the center console. And it comes out right here, next to the shifter, and then runs near some relatively sharp metal, but I'm gonna probably add a little bit of some some thick like duct tape on those edges just to help insulate a little bit more. You can actually see the power wire coming back from the bus bar in the front, the distribution block on the right side of the screen, but the power wire continues through the center console and then over towards the steering wheel. Please ignore all of that mess, and then comes out over there, out of the air vent, or near the air vent, which is where the kill switch will be. Then it comes back across the same route, back through the dash, and then underneath into the footwell, and then goes through this grommet here on the firewall. And then it comes out of that grommet in the wheel well, you can see. I have a zip tie retaining it so that it is farther back than this flange. So if the wheel, it won't come in contact with it, but it's not ideal. I know I don't want it in the fender well, but this was the easiest routing method. And then I opened up a hole where the old battery box used to have a hole in the fender. I opened it up bigger and put a grommet in there so that it could go through the fender well. And there were other holes associated with the battery box that I just used some Gorilla Tape, which is super thick, super sticky duct tape. It's my favorite duct tape to use. Then you can see the top side. It comes through there, more covering, hole coverings there because I don't want any water or debris getting through there. And it comes up into the distribution bar, and that's where the old battery cables will mount. These cables here. I haven't cut anything yet. Okay, I've got the wiring harness sort of laid out, roughly how I think I want it, and have the wires marked up. This end goes to the kill switch. This end goes to underneath the steering column where the old ignition wires were. And this end goes to the switches in the center console. The gist of how this works is I have the power coming from the old ignition switch to one side of the kill switch. When we turn it on, it will then power over to here to the first switch, or provide power to it but not turn it on, as well as, yeah, no, that's it. It just powers over to this side, sorry. Then the first switch will then provide power to the second switch, as well as the 3 wires that used to come on in position 1. I've just put them all in one wire and labeled them as such. Second switch will give power to the start switch, as well as the yellow wire, which is now blue, because that's the wiring I had. And then the start button will complete the circuit to the green wire, which is a second red wire, but it's labeled, so it should be clear. So that will come back to the ignition switch, or where the position of the old ignition switch in the steering column. And that should work. I'm gonna throw some lume on this, clean it up a little bit, put it into the car, and then we'll start putting ends on it. Okay, we have a wiring harness. Not bad. Learned a few things as I went along, but that should do. I'm gonna put this in the car, zip tie it down in some locations, and then we'll see how we go. Something I hadn't mentioned earlier is that now that we're disconnecting the battery between the alternator and the battery, there is a bit of an issue where the engine will continue to turn over after you've killed the power to it, and the alternator will continue to spin and generate a little bit of power. And you have to do something with that now that the power can't make it back to the battery. So what we are doing here is once the kill switch is off, it actually connects a circuit inside the lower 2 posts here. So what we're going to do is on the alternator side, or the engine side of the battery cable, we have this extra jumper wire, which now when we kill the battery, when it's on right now, when we kill the battery, the power will continue to go temporarily back through this wire, jump into this terminal, across this terminal, into this wire, through a resistor to dissipate the electricity, and then to a ground post, which we have in the kick panel, behind the kick panel. So that is just a little quick explanation of how we're doing that. This resistor came with this kill switch, and I've just wired some stuff in to make that work. All right, we had the, we've already replaced the barrel for this keyed ignition, but the guy who stole the car, he broke it so badly that when we put the new barrel in, there's a shaft that connects the barrel to the ignition switch, and he broke that, and so we couldn't even start the car when we got the new key in. As you can see now, this key rotates and literally nothing happens. There's no detents in it. The linkage between that barrel and this ignition switch is gone, so it used to come in here and rotate to these different positions. We were starting the car with this screwdriver, and this ignition switch was just hanging down, so we've done away with that. This is all temporary, by the way. Please don't judge my wiring here. So I basically found a wiring diagram online, and I checked what each pin or each wire does, and I have replaced this ignition switch, which has 4 positions. It has park, accessory, ignition, and start. Park, accessory, run, and start. So what I've done is I've replaced that ignition switch with this setup here. And again, this is temporary. So this would then be position 0 or park. So when I flip this on, we're in park. This will be position 1, so accessory. This is position 2, which was run. I've labeled it ignition. And then the start position is right now is a temporary, just push button, momentary switch. We're going to wire all of this into the dash, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but I'm going to show you the process now. So right now the car has no power to it because of this kill switch. So my driver's door is open, that's why you're hearing the beeping. Now we have power to the accessories, so the turn signals and the wiper, they work, and then you hear the fuel pump kick on. And then you push the clutch in. That's the process. I've proven that this works. So now what we're doing is, this is why the dash is all apart. This is all loose. We're going to mount this kill switch into this air vent here. It's going to take some work. It's a custom solution. I don't know that everyone would want to do that, but I like the way it looks, and it will be really clean when it's done. And then these 2 buttons are now transferred to the dash, where we have accessory, fuel pump, and start. This may not be our final button for the start button, but it is what we have. The one we want is on the way, but we may not get it before our first event. So that's the process. All right, so this is how we basically proved out our process of what we're going to do to replace the ignition switch. You can see here that these are the positions of the ignition switch: park, accessory, run, and start, and they're labeled 0, 1, 2, 3. And then there's 6 wires that come out of that ignition switch. So I basically just put it in each position, and then checked the wiring with the multimeter to see what was happening on each wire in each position. There's some trial and error in there, but basically what I found is that you get, your accessory and everything, and then when you get to run, you're getting power to specific sets of wires except one, and then that is your start position. That one wire gets power. So I made some assumptions down here. This is how I decided what I wanted to do with the buttons and the kill switch, and then I made a really, really crude drawing down here. So basically the power wire comes into one side of the kill switch and does not get power until the kill switch is activated, and then power goes directly to 2 wires already, just to simplify the wiring for our sake. One wire comes over to the first button and powers that button, but then when you push the button down, power goes into one wire and then powers over to the second button, and that second button gives power to a yellow wire, but also gives power to one side of the start switch. And then when you close the loop on the start switch, it goes to the starter, or the starts relay. So that's how we did it. Don't take my word for it, though. Go out and figure it out on your own. We don't know if this is going to work long term. This is just working in my garage. So there's a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Well, I'm not inventing anything, but I am coming up with a creative solution to a problem I created by trying to mount this kill switch in an air vent. which is roughly the same diameter as the kill switch itself. So what I've had to do is these lugs that I buy for the batteries, the battery wire, are flat, obviously, because everyone else in the world wants them that way, but it causes a problem fitting in the air vent. So I have a solution. I took the lug in my vise and I bent it over to make basically a flag terminal here. And now it really is, I couldn't draw it up any better than that. The wire will come in from the top basically on this view on both sides. I'll have one on this side as well. And it will bunch all of the wires together. So I have to be very, very careful about insulating everything so that there is no shorts or problems with that. But I think this is a good solution. This is kind of a big moment. To this point, I haven't done anything that I can't undo. And really, I could undo this, but just feels big. I'm gonna cut the battery, the positive battery terminal off so that we can go to a lug that will go onto this bus bar. Sorry, Todd. There it goes. I also wanted to separate the ground wire from the positive wire because they're going in different directions. I really liked having that all loomed together like that, but it just makes more sense to get it out of there. So that's what we're doing. Now I'm going to cut the negative terminal off. Now we need to find a good home for those. Put some lugs on these. Get them mounted to the bus bar, and we're almost ready to try to start this thing up and see if we're going to let the smoke out or not. Okay, all of the power wires are now connected. Could look better, but it looks okay for me, which means that the car is now ready to start. That's still a mess, but if you can see over there, the battery kill switch is mounted and the 3 switches in the center console are mounted. And everything back here is ready to go. So I am going to place the power wire on, reset the circuit breaker, and then go up to the front to the kill switch. That's temporarily on. I'm not going to tighten the terminals yet. I'm going to reset the circuit breaker. Everything seems okay. Now I'm going to get down in the car because there's no seats still. When I turn this kill switch, there'll be a honk, which when we used to take the battery terminals off in the front of the car, when you reconnect them, there was a honk as well. I don't know what that is telling me, but it was doing it before, so I'm okay with it doing now. Okay. Now we'll get probably a couple beeps. The trunk's open and whatnot, so. No? Okay, maybe on the next one. Fuel pump's on. Trunk is ajar, that's what the beep was about. Clutch in, neutral, start. Lights are on because the car's off, but kill the battery and everything is off. It works. Interior is all back together. We have the kill switch mounted, and we have the power run and start buttons wired in. Got the console, center console mostly back together. We don't have the armrest and the cup holders in yet, or the seats, obviously, but that will happen soon. We have rest of the interiors in, kick panels, door sills, door panels back on, new window in. We'll get that tinted soon. Only thing left to do on this project is to put the lid on the battery. I left the battery terminals connected and the circuit breaker closed overnight to make sure that the kill switch in the dash actually is killing all power to the car and there's not some kind of draw on it overnight. Yeah, I double checked it in the morning and there was no, same battery voltage basically, so we're good there. So I'm gonna put this lid on, the lid's over here, pull all the protective film off, and then this project will be done. I don't know if anyone else does this, and you probably won't be able to see this on the screen, but there's always like a top side of a washer. Just because of the stamping process, it sort of creates a rounded edge on one side, and then one side is sort of square corners. I always put the rounded edge up, facing the person. I might be the only person that does that, but that's me. That's what I do. And now the moment probably no one's been waiting for. Cool. Thanks for watching, and like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.